Gen Z has it harder than you.
More than 50% of Gen Zs are reported to be struggling with mental health.
Is society putting too much pressure on Gen Z? Studies delving into the mental health crisis among Gen Z. The study, based on 40 interviews, highlight key risk factors like mass shootings, social media, and climate crisis, impacting young people's mental well-being. Despite living in a relatively safe era, Gen Z perceives the world in extreme terms of safety or danger, lacking the understanding of risk as a spectrum. This binary view contributes significantly to the rise in anxiety, depression, and suicidal tendencies, especially among young girls and women. As presented in the 2023 Risk for Analysis Annual Conference, Gabriel Rubin from Montclair State University conducted 40 interviews with members of Gen Z as a publication, in an ongoing study about risk factors that have led to the current mental health crisis in young people. One of the major takeaways from the interviews is that members of Gen Z are fed a constant stream of news alerts that will overemphasize their threat level. Gen Z is presented with a world where risk is black and white. Things are safe or contain a dangerous risk. Prior research has demonstrated that risk is not black and white. There are many risks in life that can be weighed, yet Gen Z members view risk as either the presence or absence of safety in a situation. This research has so far revealed that the disparity in risk assessment has led many young people to feel anxious, depressed, and even suicidal. The status of your mental health can usually be described as poor, fair, good, or excellent. Compared with older generations today, the Gallup WFF study said that members of Gen Z are much more likely to report experiencing negative emotions, such as stress, anxiety, and loneliness. Researchers also said they found evidence that Gen Z's self-reported mental health struggles are distinct from those of previous generations at the same age. Asked to describe their current mental health or well-being, only 15% of Gen Z aged 18 to 26 said it was excellent. That is a steep drop compared to a decade ago, the study found, when 52% of millennials in that same age range said their mental health was excellent. And in 2004, 55% of people aged 18 to 26, including both millennials and Gen X respondents, reported excellent mental health. Why was there such a significant decrease? Researchers noted the overall declines in mental health over the past decade may be partially responsible. According to the study, both millennials and members of Gen Z report far lower mental health ratings today than they did a decade ago. This isn't the first research highlighting Gen Z's mental health struggles. Earlier this year, the U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention said poor mental health remains a substantial public health problem for adolescents, especially among teen girls. A 2018 report from the American Psychological Association found that compared to other generations, more generations of Gen Z thought their mental health was fair or poor. At this time, the association's CEO called the shift concerning, but noted there could also be a positive sign. Quote, "This generation may be more tuned in to recognizing issues with their mental health than older generations." Gen Z is heavily overburdened with fears of the future. Society is questioning if the parents are to blame. As Sarah Jaquette Ray, a teacher of environmental studies, said in a 2020 article, Generation Z are the climate generation, and they have been traumatized by their awareness of this issue. Quote, "They speak of an apocalypse on the horizon. Some students become so overwhelmed with despair and grief that they shut down. Their sense of powerlessness, whether real or imagined, is at the root of their despair." It's not just climate change that Zoomers feel defeated by. They were also the first generation of youths to live through a global pandemic since 1918. A report on stress in America found that half of young Gen Z teens have said that the pandemic affected their outlook on their future, with a similar number saying that it's made their future seem downright impossible. Futurologists tell Gen Z that by 2040, 30 to 40% of their jobs will be replaced by robots and AI. In adding to their problems, Zoomers are reporting compulsive use of smartphones, social media, and pornography. Both have been proven to cause anxiety and depression. In addition to the tragic and social media that their parents have subjected them to, it's possible that Gen Z have been overloaded by unresolved anxieties their parents passed on to them. One of the impending apocalypses that Generation Z are anxious about is population explosion. "I don't ever want to have kids," as Zoomers say. "Overpopulation is killing the planet." but yet the West has actually been in population decline for the last 2 decades. This is definitely a retro anxiety that the Zoomers inherited from their Gen X parents, who grew up with the population boom in the 1970s, predictions that have now been widely debunked. As a result of living under this ambient fear, Gen X grew up to be, like Gen Z is today, anxious of the future and more depressed and pessimistic than the previous generation, the baby boomers. To boomers, Generation X seemed to be negative, demotivated, slackers, and their music and films were seen as dark and destructive. But back in the 1990s, they too slouched around moaning, "Everything is ruined, what's the point?" Many of their cultural icons suffered from mental illness and addiction. Too many succumbed to suicide. It's possible that Generation X parents may have inadvertently passed their unresolved traumas onto their own Gen Z kids through the catastrophizing culture they created. Even if Generation X's worst fear about nuclear war, climate change, or population explosion were well-founded, even if they spread these fears to raise awareness, they may have gone beyond the tipping point in communicating these terrors with their Gen Z kids. They could teach some of the resilience they developed over the last 3 decades. The courage that led them to have kids in the first place. They should try to instill hope that whatever the future is, we 2 generations can help each other cope. Thank you for listening to my deep dive on society having too much pressure on Gen Z. I will see you next time I upload.